Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The corporate party was buzzing, a mix of laughter, clinking glasses, and chatter. I stood at the bar, nursing my drink, watching Michelle. She was across the room, animated and radiant, surrounded by colleagues, her red dress catching the light. She had insisted I come, saying it was important for me to meet her work friends. I went along with it, even though I would have preferred a quiet evening at home. As I sipped my drink, a man approached me, wearing a slightly unbuttoned shirt and a confident smirk. "You must be Benjamin," he said, holding out his hand. "I'm Tiller, a colleague of Michelle's." I shook his hand, feeling a little uneasy. "Nice to meet you," I said, forcing a smile. He chuckled, a sound that grated against my nerves. "I've heard a lot about you," he said, glancing over at Michelle. "She talks about you, sometimes." The way he said it made my skin crawl. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light, but my stomach was already tightening. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I'm just saying, she's a busy woman. Late nights at the office, long meetings, sometimes it's hard to keep track of everything, isn't it?" I frowned, not quite understanding. "I'm not sure what you're getting at." Tiller took a sip of his drink, then looked me straight in the eyes. "We're having an affair, Benjamin. I thought you should know." For a moment, I was sure I had misheard him. "What?" I managed to say, my voice barely audible over the music. He shrugged almost casually. "Michelle and I. It's been going on for months. I thought it was time someone told you." My mind reeled. This couldn't be true. Michelle wasn't like that. "You're lying," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel the words wavering. Tiller's smile widened. "Believe what you want," he said, patting my shoulder. "But maybe you should check her phone sometime. You'd be surprised what you'll find." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I watched as Tiller walked away, blending back into the crowd, as if he hadn't just shattered my world. I glanced over at Michelle, who was laughing, completely oblivious. I didn't want to believe it, but the seed of doubt had been planted. If he was telling the truth, I needed to know. I pulled out my phone, debating whether to confront her now or wait until I had proof. Either way, this wasn't over. The drive home was a blur, my thoughts spiraling in a storm of disbelief and anger. I couldn't forget Tiller's smug grin, the casual way he confessed. It felt like a punch to the gut, one I couldn't shake off. But I wasn't going to confront Michelle blindly. If she was truly betraying me, I needed proof, cold, undeniable evidence. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention. Michelle's behavior hadn't changed. She was still her usual charming self, talking about her work, asking about my day. It made me sick to my stomach. I decided to check her phone one evening while she was in the shower, my hands shaking as I scrolled through her messages. There was nothing unusual at first, just the usual work chatter. But then I found a message thread saved under K that didn't seem right. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Usual spot. I'm counting down the hours, baby. Same time." The messages were from Tiller. My heart pounded as I read through weeks of exchanges, some flirtatious, others explicit. There it was, the proof I needed, staring back at me in black and white. I felt my hands tremble, but a strange calm washed over me. If Michelle thought she could get away with this, she was wrong. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I began to piece together what I'd do. I wasn't just going to end this marriage. I was going to dismantle the life she thought she was building. First, I needed to confirm their rendezvous. I installed a tracking app on her phone, set to notify me whenever she went to that usual spot she had mentioned. The following evening, she left, saying she had a late meeting. My phone pinged almost immediately after, showing her location moving towards a small boutique hotel across town. I followed, parking discreetly down the street. I watched as she entered the hotel, and soon after Tiller joined her. They disappeared inside, laughing. I clenched the steering wheel, a surge of rage threatening to consume me. But I forced myself to breathe. Not yet, I thought. I need more. I snapped a few photos, just enough to confirm what I already knew. The next morning, over breakfast, Michelle was scrolling through her phone, sipping her coffee as if everything was normal. I couldn't resist testing the waters. "Another late night?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. She looked up, not a flicker of guilt in her eyes. "Yeah, these client meetings are killer," she said, yawning. "I'm probably going to have a few more this week." I smiled, though it felt like my face would crack. "You're working so hard," I said softly. "I hope it pays off." She returned the smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was like looking at a stranger. I excused myself and left for work, my mind buzzing with the next step. I needed to hit them where it would hurt most. Over the next few days, I began gathering more evidence, quietly, meticulously. I printed screenshots of their texts, photos of them meeting up, even a few receipts from their little hotel escapades. Then I called in a favor from a friend at the department at her company. I needed to make sure I could access the right channels when the time was right. I planned my move for the upcoming company gala, a night Michelle had been looking forward to for weeks. It was perfect. I would be polite, supportive, and play the loving husband. And then right when she thought everything was going her way, I'd watch her perfect little world crumble. As I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie, I whispered to myself, this isn't about just ending it. It's about making sure they never forget what they did. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. It was a Thursday evening, and I had tracked Michelle's car to a familiar location, a small bar on the edge of town. I parked a few spots down, my fingers drumming on the steering wheel as I watched them through the window. Michelle and Tiller sat close, laughing over drinks, completely oblivious to my presence. It was time. I waited until she left, excusing herself to take a phone call. My heart pounded as I stepped out of the car and walked up to the entrance. I pushed open the door and Tiller's head snapped up, his smile fading the moment he saw me. For a moment, I could see the confusion in his eyes. He had no idea what was coming. I approached slowly, pulling out the chair across from him. Mind if I join you? I asked, keeping my voice calm. Tiller glanced around, clearly uncomfortable. Benjamin, hey, I didn't expect to see you here. I leaned in, close enough for him to see the restrained fury in my eyes. I didn't expect to be here either, I said. But then, I didn't expect my wife to be having an affair with her colleague, so I guess we're both dealing with surprises. Tiller's face went pale, and he opened his mouth, searching for words. Look, man, she prefers me. I'm better in bed than you. I cut him off, slamming my hand down on the table hard enough to make the glasses rattle. Don't even try it, I hissed. I've seen the texts, the calls, I've seen you together. You really thought you could get away with it. He swallowed, glancing around as if hoping someone might intervene. But the bar was quiet, almost empty, and no one was paying us any attention. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I never meant for it to get this far. I leaned back, forcing a smile. You're going to end it, I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. You're going to tell her it's over, and you're going to do it tonight. Otherwise, I paused, letting the threat linger in the air. Otherwise, I'll make sure everyone at the office knows exactly who you are, including your boss. I'm sure your wife would be interested to hear about your extracurricular activities too. Tiller's eyes widened, and he slumped back in his seat, defeated. Okay, I'll end it, I promise. I stood up, adjusting my jacket. Good, I said. And don't think this is the last you'll hear from me. Because if I find out you've lied again, there won't be any more warnings. I turned and walked out, my hands shaking as I reached the car. It wasn't satisfaction I felt, but something colder, darker. This was just the beginning. A few days passed and Michelle and Tiller continued their love games at the hotel. Tiller wouldn't listen to me, and it was time for me to step in. The company gala was in full swing, the ballroom filled with the clinking of champagne glasses and the murmur of polished, rehearsed conversations. I moved through the crowd with a calm, deliberate pace, nodding at familiar faces. Tonight wasn't about pleasantries, though. It was about making sure the truth exploded in front of every one of them, leaving no room for denial. I spotted Michelle and Tiller across the room, laughing with a group of colleagues, oblivious to what was coming. My heart raced as I slipped the small USB drive into the hand of Linda from HR. I had made sure she was in charge of the presentation slides tonight, knowing she wouldn't question an additional special announcement file. Could you make sure this gets played after the keynote? I said, smiling as if it was a simple request. Linda glanced at the drive, then back at me, confused but compliant. Sure, Benjamin. What is it? Just a little surprise, I replied, my voice steady. You'll see. As I walked away, I could feel the anticipation building, almost suffocating. I found a spot near the back of the room, where I could see both the screen and their faces. The keynote speaker finished his speech, thanking everyone for their hard work over the past year, and then it was time. The lights dimmed and the projector flickered to life. At first, there was a montage of the company's achievements, but then the screen glitched, the images cutting to a series of text messages, intimate, unmistakable exchanges between Michelle and Tiller, revealing everything. Gasps echoed through the ballroom, whispers spreading like wildfire. I kept my eyes on Michelle, watching as her smile vanished, her face draining of color. Tiller's expression twisted into horror, his gaze darting around the room. Michelle turned to Tiller, her voice barely audible. What's happening? She hissed, but there was no time to answer. The final slide appeared on the screen, a photo of the two of them at the bar, from the night I had confronted Tiller. Underneath, a simple caption read, "To our dedicated colleagues, meet your secret lovers." I stepped forward, making my way toward the front as the murmurs grew louder. "Looks like the company is full of surprises tonight," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Michelle's eyes locked onto mine, a mix of disbelief and panic. She knew. She knew exactly who had orchestrated this. "Benjamin, what did you do?" she said, her voice trembling. I shrugged, feigning innocence. "I just thought it was time everyone saw the truth. Isn't that what this event is about? Celebrating honesty and transparency?" Before she could respond, Tiller bolted for the exit, his face a mask of shame. Michelle stayed rooted to the spot, tears welling up in her eyes, the room's attention bearing down on her like a spotlight. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I had no need to. The night air was cool, and the streetlights cast long, wavering shadows across the almost empty parking lot. I leaned against my car, waiting, my eyes fixed on the sleek, silver sedan parked a few rows away. It was Tiller's, of course. He hadn't been able to escape the aftermath of the gala, and now they would have to face me one last time. I didn't have to wait long. Tiller stumbled out of the building, his shoulders slumped, tie loosened, looking like a man who had just crawled out of a wreckage. As he approached his car, he caught sight of me, and I could see the flicker of recognition turn into unease. He hesitated, glancing around as if checking for witnesses, then forced a casual smile. "What do you want, Benjamin?" he called out, trying to sound confident, but his voice wavered. I took a few steps forward, making sure he could see the small metal wrench glinting in my hand. "Just thought we should have a final chat," I said calmly, tapping the wrench against my palm. "After all, you've caused quite a mess, don't you think?" Tiller's eyes widened, and he raised his hands defensively. "Look, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Michelle." "Save it," I interrupted, my tone sharp. "I've heard enough lies. I want you to understand something. What you did to my marriage, to my life. There's no coming back from that." I stepped closer, letting the words sink in, and now I'm done playing nice. Without waiting for a response, I swung the wrench down hard onto the hood of his car, the metal crunching under the impact. Tiller jumped back, eyes wide with shock, as I continued to slam the wrench down, again and again, until the headlights shattered and the hood was dented beyond recognition. "Stop, are you crazy?" he shouted, rushing forward as if to grab me, but I spun around and pointed the wrench at him, stopping him in his tracks. "Touch me and don't regret it," I said, my voice low but firm. "You already took everything I cared about. This is just a reminder of what happens when you cross the wrong person." Tiller was breathing hard, his face flushed with fear and anger. "You're going to pay for this," he hissed, trying to regain his composure. I laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Maybe, but tonight, you're the one who's going to pay." I threw the wrench aside, letting it clatter to the ground. "Now get in your car and drive away, far away. Because if I ever see you near me or Michelle again, I won't just be targeting your car." For a moment, Tiller just stood there, his eyes darting between me and the wreckage of his vehicle, as if he couldn't quite process what had just happened. Then, without a word, he scrambled into the driver's seat, started the engine, and sped off into the night, leaving a trail of screeching tires behind him. I watched until his taillights disappeared, a strange sense of calm settling over me. The next morning, I stood outside the courthouse, the divorce papers neatly folded in my briefcase. Michelle showed up, her eyes puffy and red, like she had barely slept. I didn't need to say anything. She already knew what was coming. "You're really going through with this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if she still held on to some hope that this could be fixed. "I am," I replied, steady and sure. "And you know what this means under the terms of the prenup." She looked at me, panic flickering in her eyes. "Benjamin, please, we can work this out. I'll do anything." "You should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with Tiller," I said coldly. "The prenup is clear. You cheated, you get nothing." It was over in a matter of minutes. As I walked out, the finality of the divorce sinking in, I felt lighter than I had in months. Michelle would have to start over, without the money, without the comfort, and without me. And as for me, I was finally free, ready to start anew without the burden of betrayal weighing me down.